So, Alan, can I ask you first of all, quick introduction about your company?
We're a company called Xpenditure, and we're in the expense management space. So anybody here that has to manage expenses will recognize that it is a real pain. It's very time-consuming, it's very laborious. You might lose receipts, it's a headache for financial people, etc. With us, you simply use your phone to take a picture of your receipt. It sucks up all the data, integrates it with all major leading accounting software applications, and also integrates with the likes of Direct ID to enable consumers to match statements and expenses. So for us, it's all about saving time, I guess.
Fantastic. And so, can you talk about what you've been doing with My Card and what's the innovation angle and what sort of products and services that you've been developing?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, let's think back 5 years ago. We didn't have, the power of these devices in our pockets. They weren't as ubiquitous as they were now. So we're actually a very new, early company that sort of couldn't have existed 5 years ago. For us, it's a case of saving time. It's taking away a huge pain, not only for the individual, but also for the accounting team, as I mentioned. So for us, the innovation is around simplicity. Take a picture of the receipt. The OCR reads the data, pushes it into the system, which gives real-time visibility to everybody in the company, or particularly the finance team, around expenses happening in real time. So it's no longer a case of waiting till the end of the quarter, filling an envelope full of receipts, putting them in the post and filling in Excel spreadsheets. You're now doing it in real time. The integration with Direct ID for us is a very interesting one, whereby we're scraping data so customers have the ability to link to their credit card providers. Again, the power here is very much around simplicity and convenience. You can simply, the days of having to print out statements and go through each one line by line, manually crossing off against expenses are gone. So again, what's interesting is a lot of people have had to manage expenses and weekends and on their own time and all this sort of stuff, whereas now it's very much a case of taking a picture, uploading it into the system, integrating with the likes of your bank account or your credit card statement, but also linking with your accounting software.
So this is just great, because what we're looking at here is saving individuals just loads of time and saving business people loads of time. So as somebody who submits my expenses about once and as somebody who runs my own business, does he think I'd be able to get this sorted out? Can I buy that? What's the business model? Do I buy that? And can I ask you for a discount? No, carry on. You carry on. So what's the business model that
So here's the incredible thing. I mean, from a SaaS solution, again, it's very powerful. It's between £5 and £7 a month for the user, which again, in terms of return on investment, it's just, and again, not just speaking from Expenditure, there are other people offering sort of comparable solutions, and clearly not as good, but sort of in the same space. But I guess it's very competitive from a price point. So we have annual and monthly licenses. I mean, the beauty of it from our perspective is that the appeal is very widespread and global. So that was one of the attractions, I guess, with you guys. I mean, the number of bank accounts that we can integrate with. So we have users that are single users, freelancers, and then big corporates like Pernod Ricard, Deloitte, Henkel. So really it covers the full range in terms of kind of the market.
Fantastic. And really what's really different is the identity that sits behind it, enabling you to identify
I mean, a powerful OCR recognition tool, competitive in price, great customer service, but also a sort of real focus on innovation. And I think I'll give you a very simple example. If your company policy allows you to spend £200 on a hotel, we can put in incentives that if you spend £100 rather than £200, we can start looking at ways to sort of split the share. So there's a kind of, when you have 20,000 or 5,000 employees like some of our bigger corporates have, you have a real strong ability to not only save a lot of money in terms of the process, but also to start changing behavior and getting away from batching expenses at the end of a quarter and sort of spending your max on hotels, because now we can sort of incentivize people to behave differently.
Well, then one of the things that we've been talking about recently was the trust in the data as well. So as a business, if you as Ctrl-Shift signed up for it, then you knew that the data was mine data and that I wasn't just changing the description of the transaction on my bank statement for it to be whatever it wants. You could actually change how you pay your expenses to your employees by trusting that that is their statement data.
Which has been one of the barriers, isn't it? Which is, hang on a second, but people can then just fiddle around with their data as it kind of becomes theirs and then somebody else's. I can just change it and claim £500 instead of £50. So
right.
Now what you're doing is actually attaching the identity and on the validation of the data.
Absolutely.
So it's it's the power. But again, the key thing here is this could not have existed 5 and 10 years ago. It's very much a concept that's for the modern age, because it gets back to these devices in our pockets. The ubiquity and the power of these means that it's a 30-second job. I was waiting outside, processed my expense to get here. Took me 30 seconds. I press submit. It's now in the system. My accountant sees it. Done and dusted.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you very much.
Good.
So, Lee, can we ask you just a quick introduction to the company?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lee Birkett. I'm the founder of eMoneyUnion. We are part of the new sharing economy. We're part of the new innovative finance ISA regime that's coming in April. And what we do is match people with extra spare cash with people who need to borrow who are financially excluded. So we're a matchmaking peer-to-peer platform, bringing the unbanked together with those that are unhappy with the banks.
Fantastic. And you've also been working with MyCard. What sort of products, new products, services have you been innovating, just looking at it from the innovation perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we're taking people's money on our platform. So it's very important that we ensure that the people who are going to borrow on our platform are good for it. So the credit bureaus out there at the moment don't have the data that we needed to make that decision. We certainly couldn't trust scanned bank statements, exactly for the reason that we discussed here. They're easily doctorable. And MyCard approached us because they were looking for people to utilize this tool, which was live bank data. And the live bank data enables us to get a real picture of a borrower. And, you know, if they've got a gambling habit, we can see it. If they're, you know, they've got some other habits, we can see it. If they're going to Gibraltar or what, you know, you can see a real picture of somebody's profile that wasn't visible in the credit bureaus. So we've been probably the most conservative platform that we turned down actually 98% of applicants because we're seeing their true position in their bank statements. And we're seeing a lot of irresponsible lending still going on today by payday companies. They haven't learned, they're still doing it. And unfortunately, a lot of the banks are still ignoring certain real life data. So we're seeing a true picture of a borrower, and that again brings around a bit of trust. So we've gone from lending small £5,000 loans. We've gained the trust of our lenders. We've done some £50,000 loans. 2 weeks ago, we did a £300,000 loan, and we're about to list a £650,000 loan because we built that trust because the data's true.
So regulators must be putting their arms around you and hugging you on a daily basis because this is about responsible lending. That's where you're taking it.
I definitely believe that, but sometimes it feels like they've got a contract out on me.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's the regulatory framework are very engaged. The problem we have is one side of the regulatory framework is historical, traditional, old school regulation. And then we have another angle, which is policy. We have a new legal framework, which is very quick, efficient, and forward-thinking. And we're just, you know, we feel in many instances like we're doing the arbitration of what's going to happen.
Between.
But it's happening. You know, the Chancellor has said peer-to-peer lending is here to stay. It's boosting businesses, it's creating jobs, and it's putting money to, you know, to people who need to borrow. And it's common sense lending. It's not irresponsible. It's common sense.
Can you bring to light at all how MyCard and what you're doing, the new products and services, works as a process for the individual? What would I get?
Yeah, literally we take a borrower, we use Equifax to do an initial score of them, and before we actually approve them to be a borrower, we ping an email to them and they log in via a portal, a white label portal, and it's quite a very delicate process because the person has to submit into their bank to share their data with us. And you know, there's a lot of trust building going on, and we spend a lot of time trying to get the message over to the borrowers. And I'm sure a lot of people in here would feel very uneasy about sharing their bank data. But we're saying, listen, you know, we need to see this data if you want to borrow money because we've got hundreds of people giving you money here. If you want to borrow from us, we want you to share that trust with us as well.
And how does the Payment Systems Directive and Open Banking Working Group play to your...
Well, I think it opens the market up massively. We're part, obviously, of the EU Mortgage and Credit Directive that starts in April next year. So our products will be loans, mortgages, and you know, it's a whole European marketplace for us after April. That's from a lending perspective and a borrowing perspective. And so the ability for my card to onboard, I mean, we had a couple of Spanish banks trying to work with us, and they have no data. They have a once-a-month blacklist of people who've not paid back. And that's only, so that there is no data in Spain to consider borrowers. So being able to access their bank data for our expansion plans is critical.
Fantastic. And are you live today? Can people use
Yep,
this? You're saying you've already
we've
lent
taken
money
£100 million worth of applications. We've lent over £1.5 million. So we're still in beta mode. We're waiting for, we have got FCA interim permissions. The law of being able to deposit your ISA money with us is supposed to be here at the end of December, and we're supposed to be operating from April. So there's a mad rush between the regulator and the handful of platforms that are operating under this regime now.
So I understand from somebody in Australia that there's a new hormone available that means you don't have to sleep at all 24/7. There's no side effects. There's no bad side effects to this stuff. I could tell you what the name of that stuff is because it sounds to me like you're going to be busy over the next
well, my
wee
ex-chief
while
ops is in
because there's
Adelaide.
going to be a rocket machine. Yeah?
The DTI are wanting us to go to Canada. We're acknowledged as the FCA is actually the gilt edge regulatory framework acknowledged around the world. So whilst we are going through a lot of pain over the last couple of years, we are being welcomed around the world with open arms to operate our systems and controls and platform in other jurisdictions. So it's not when, it's how quick and how robust.
Well, and it's really great to hear because, you know, as Stephen from Facebook was talking about, you know, this is about us all working together, the regulators, the individuals, the organisations, the technology companies, everybody bringing this forward, helping regulators to see a way forward where they can minimise regulation and they don't have to sit on your shoulder and cause you all weekend to work on goodness knows what, which no doubt is how it is. Thank you very much, that's great. Faisel, can I ask you also, as MD and founder of Fair Finance, to make a quick introduction of your company?
So Fair Finance is a social business. It's a non-profit based in London tackling the issues of financial exclusion. So very similar in some issues around people who are unable to access finance. Well, actually they can access finance, it's just very, very expensive. And so our kind of potential market is between 5 and 7 million. And we're quite a small organisation. We deal with around 15,000 people in the UK. Mainly in the southeast of England, but we're beginning to expand in different parts of the country. Our kind of typical clients are either people who have very little data, so they've either recently arrived into the country or they're quite old and they haven't really engaged with the financial services industry very much, or they're quite young and actually their data's pretty terrible because they might have made 1 or 2 bad mistakes. And the job of Fair Finance, which works through a network of branches across the city, is to essentially interview everybody who comes through and to try and understand the complexity of their finances and figure out whether they might be creditworthy or not, and then be able to, through process, advice, support and lending, help them fix their financial situation and get into a better place.
Wow, that's quite an amazing feat. I mean, that's fairly intense. And you're using My Card to do that. Can you tell us more about the product and services, how you're innovating that using My Card to actually bring that to market?
So we currently run, so we work with a number of banks and offer access to banking for anyone who doesn't have an account. But we also have 3 other products. So one is free money and debt advice for people who make lots and lots of bad decisions and really need to find a way to fix their finances. And the other is kind of consumer finance, where we're lending to take people out of payday and doorstep lenders. And then the third is around small business lending, where we're lending to small businesses. And our loans are between £50 and up to £20,000. And so we're piloting My Card in 2 of the businesses, and we're hoping to do the third. So if I tell you how we're thinking about it as a
That'd be great, yeah.
So, I mean, we're a non-profit, right? So ultimately, our aim and objective is to try and find a way to make our services as cheap and as efficient as possible. And I can tell you how painful it is to use an OCR to figure out how to get somebody's PDF bank statement data into the Excels that allow us to figure out how to do credit assessments. So we've got to 15,000 clients, and if we're going to continue to grow, we need to find a way to radically change our operating principles. And so part of working with My Card is allowing us to access that data in a much quicker and smarter and better way. With our money advice teams, that allows us to, within a couple of minutes, figure out how you're spending your cash and actually stand in front of you alongside your creditors to figure out how you could essentially afford to repay any one of them and manage whatever commitments you have within your own structure. And actually be confident that we're giving both the banks, the credit providers, and the consumer the right information. On the two lending services, I truly believe that kind of credit underwriting is two parts, and the bit that everybody's really good at is essentially getting more and more data and analysing it quicker and quicker. That tells you some very good things about people's habits. What it doesn't do is it doesn't tell you whether they'll repay you. They'll just tell you what they've done. So we interview everybody who comes in, either by phone or face-to-face, to really get a sense of who they are, what does the money really mean, and how are they working. So to give you an idea, when they come in for an interview, we have a screen in front of them and we ask them about existing debts. They'll likely say yes or no, probably no, that they have none, and then we'll run their credit report in front of them so that they can actually see what they've done. And the issue isn't whether they've got debts or not, the issue is what's their reaction? Right, do they want to fix it or do they want to do something about it? So we're using my card to speed up the kind of technological side of what we do, the analytical side, to complement the human-centered face-to-face side of our work. Because at the end of the day, the thing that we're really good at is talking to people and understanding what their finances, what their financial decision-making has come out from. And if we can find a way to do that, we can lend to them. So, for example, we lend to people who typically are borrowing at rates in excess of 1,000%. Will probably not be lent to by banks because they're expected to default between 80 and 90% of the time, and our default rate is below 3% for very, very low-income individuals earning less than £17,000.
It's amazing. It sounds like it's a lot of lessons to be learned as well for existing banks, actually, because, as I said earlier on, they're all being faced by the fact that on one hand, they've got the existing market, and then on the other hand, they've got the digital market. And we kind of talk about them like they're going to be a separate thing, but actually what you're doing is bringing the digital and the analog market together and creating an efficient way using digital identity to actually enable that to happen on behalf of the individual. So it's bringing people and digital assets together to really work on behalf of the individual to create value and in their lives. That's just, how long have you been in existence?
So we've now celebrated 10 years of expansion. So we're funded through a network of social investors and banks. And I can't reiterate more of what you've just said. I mean, I think the key thing for me has always been trust, the words that you talked about earlier. And so in terms of, sorry, is that not coming through? So in terms of what we've been focused on is, there is no reason that you have to believe that dealing with people who are on low income is about being analog, right? It's not necessarily just about face-to-face activities. And there's no reason to believe that a non-profit needs to be in the previous century. It is about using the best of what you've got available. But ultimately, and at the end of the day, if you don't build a connection with somebody, you don't know them. And you can use information and data, and for our business, it's the key and fundamental part that allows us to do the really key bit, right? Yep. Talking to people and finding out what they're like.
It's a refreshing thought in the finance sector sometimes, I have to say. And in fact, in many sectors. Thank you very much, Faisel. That was great. Anne Boden, CEO of Starling Bank, one of the challenger banks in the UK. So can we just have 30 seconds on Starling Bank?
Yeah, what a great panel, by the way, and great companies. Starling Bank is a new entrant bank in the UK. We're a retail bank for those people who wander down the streets looking at their mobile rather than where they're actually going. And we believe that financial services is going to be very, very different in the future. We believe that people should be focusing on what they should do, what they can do really, really well and differentiate themselves. So we're only providing current accounts, the best current account in the world, and we live in an ecosystem where other providers who are better equipped than we are will provide those other services. So we'll coexist. And we'll share data, and we'll have the best people for identity, the best people for ISAs, the best people serving certain products to certain people. And in this ecosystem, that I think will happen in the next couple of years, we'll be the party with the current account, providing access to payment services. And the important thing is that we'll have lots and lots of data about everything you do. And this data is being used for your customers' benefit. Not used to cross-sell and upsell, but what can that data do to help people get the best value for money for themselves and guide them in their financial life? What can you do to use that data to get the best deals from other service providers? So we think that we are going to be developing a product that will sit at the heart of somebody's financial lives and will coexist in this environment with people around this sort of panel.
Fantastic. And working with my card, what sort of products and services are you creating?
We believe in the same thing. Everybody up here believes that the world is going to be different that we only will be successful if we actually come up with ways of working together. That every organization will do something very well. And we have to develop and push everybody out there to come up with the means and methods and standards for doing things together. And that's our view in the world.
And how long has Starling Bank been going?
Well, we launch next year, so you can't have a count yet,
No.
but next year you can. We've been working on this proposition for 2 years now. Getting a banking license, well, it has got easier, but it's hardly easy. You know, the hurdles are still very high because we take in people's money and we have to protect that. But it's a long project, and we're well on the way to success, but next year you'll see us in the retail market.
And so how will it feel? Will it feel different having a current account with Starling Bank?
It'll be so special, but I'm not telling you yet, because that's
Okay,
a
that's a
secret. for next
secret.
year.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're not allowed to know until you start to compete in the marketplace,
Exactly.
but that's very exciting. And just knowing that you're working with MyCard, we know that that's going to be something around personal information and about empowering individuals.
Quite special and quite secret.
Okay, fantastic. So, thank you very much, everybody. I think we've got a couple of minutes. How are we doing, Daniel? Yes, we're okay. To do a quick panel session so that we can bring questions from the floor. If anybody's got any questions they want to ask the panel about what we've heard now, that would be great. Now, I think there's a mic that's going to be coming round, so if anybody wants to ask a question.
And these are the companies to ask, because it's very much around being consumer centric, as empowering consumers. And as much as is coming from an identity sort of space, we like to think it's identity and trust and stuff that's really disrupting the market. It's not. It's not about any of what we do. It's about how what we do gets used to create that disruption. So, sorry.
Hi, I'm Will. Fascinating stuff. The one thing that struck me on your initial slides, James, was you had rich data and experiences on the other side. And it feels to me that the corollary really is rich experiences. So obviously the moment you get permission from a customer to start accessing more and more data because of your launch product, very quickly you're going to need to start using that data to continuously reassess and improve that experience. So I thought the idea of essentially gaming how people claim expenses for hotels is genius. That's exactly the sort of experience they're looking for. But so my question is the knock-on, the second-order impact of having rich data, both culturally and systemically, for more established organizations is quite a big thing to do. And whether you're talking to people within a legal framework or you're talking to social services, how do you manage that conversation? How do you get over the inertia and fear of change?
Is that change in big organisations?
I think change in big organisations, but just change even from a regulatory point of view, just saying, well, look, this is the world that once was. Our risks are, I suppose we assess risk based on old knowledge. These impacts, this data means a new world. So how do you couch that conversation, and how successful have you been? Yeah. And what could be done better by either institutions or yourselves or lobbyists?
I think as part of that perfect storm comment from Alan this morning was, I think if you look at the risk and the fraud that keeps going on out there, if you look at the propensity for personal data to further that fraud, we live in a world that is a little bit crazy in a couple perspectives. The first is we use your name, address, and date of birth to try and validate your identity. But everybody here knows my name, address, and date of birth, so how does that help? When I use that and store that information, I then get hacked because I'm storing that information. We're sharing that as consumers to everybody we deal with. Then we're just increasing the risk for me as an individual, even down to document verification. So every time I scan and send in my document, someone else now has a copy of that can be used to impersonate me. Just Google for driver's licenses UK and you'll see tens of thousands of results of those things that are out there. I think also though, if you look at the fraud and the cyber risk as an example, the pain of these things is now increasing to a point where we don't have a choice. I think we have to do things differently, whether from a fraud or regulatory perspective. We're seeing that with PSD2 and the Open Bank Working Group, the impetus from the regulators, from central government now to embrace these things, the focus on Fintech, the disruption in financial services have all come together to say, actually, times are changing, and it's not actually they're changing. I think they've already changed. We're just kind of realizing that there's companies out there doing things differently.
Things like TransferWise or Uber, I mean, they're compelling solutions that are really, by some margin, better than the alternatives. I mean, TransferWise is a phenomenal product. I think as those sort of products become more mainstream, particularly with millennials using them, the conversation changes a little bit in terms of the benefit set being more compelling and sort of powerful enough to justify the increased sort of data that's been transferred. Does that make sense?
So just to say, we've got a panel session where James is on later on. If there's any pressing questions for these four fantastic people here, it would be really great to hear from you. Liz, hi.
I was really interested, Anne, in what you were saying about offering one thing and then linking up with others, because that seems to go against the bigger trends we see of big companies trying to do everything and bundling and bundling and bundling. So my question was really, how do you see that your model being able to compete with that big pressure, and can regulation help, and does it help at the moment?
Yeah, I think we have to start the great unbundling. I think we're in a situation where, I've been 30 years in the banking industry, and every couple of years we get a bunch of consultants in, we sit in a boardroom, we say, how are we going to cross-sell more? How are we going to get more share of the wallet? And that results, in many cases, in mis-selling. That's the problems that we've had in the past. I think that we all should actually think very carefully whether we're the best provider for that product for our customer. And although the big, banks are trying to keep their arms around all the products and be the sole provider of all those services to the customers, it's not in the customer's interests. And we have a huge number of great innovative companies coming up to address these individual problems. And in this environment, in this ecosystem, we're going to have the next big breakthrough. We won't all succeed, but we'll actually raise the bar for everyone. And the big organizations, some will succeed and reinvent themselves, but some will decide that they can't compete with the power of people getting together to give customers what they really want.
Hey, look, I'm really sorry because we're out of time. We knew this was going to be tight, but these guys are going to be here hopefully over lunch, so if you want to catch them and have a chat about what they're doing, that would be great. So
Please give them a hand.
yeah, absolutely.